Hi, everyone. My name is Shiv Dave. Welcome to Ishmael's Interactive's CX Pod. Today's guest, we have Maura Shea. Maura, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell the folks what you're up to.
Thanks, Chief. Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Yep, I'm Maura Shea. I am an associate professor of industry at the Institute of Design and the co-director of the Institute of Design Food Systems Action Lab at Illinois Tech.
Awesome stuff. You've been doing a lot of work in this design space. Like that's how I sort of found you. We found each other through a mutual friend of ours. You spent your career bringing innovation methods into organizations that weren't built for them. So we're talking like the YMCA, Feeding America, big like bureaucratic organizations, you could say. And but now you're focusing on field building, which is bringing innovation to coalitions, collectives, collaborations across organizations and institutions. But you've also been around the block for quite a bit. You've also worked at IDEO back in the day. So if you watch this buzzword of innovation turn into a buzzword, right? Design thinking turn into a buzzword and being templatized and stripped out of what actually makes it useful. So what do you see happening and what can you tell us about where the real work actually is?
Yeah, super. I think a good way to mark time is the last decade or so, sort of since the 2015 HBR article that really tried to put design thinking on the map of management. Um,
Mhm.
and I don't remember exactly what the headline was about, but it was about like how it's evolved into its rightful place in the C-suite and really trying to drive strategy and change management or managing change, I think, something like that. And it was really trying to position design as an enterprise-wide core competency, which for those of us doing that work at that time, that was like a dream come true in many ways, to not have to be the only one fighting the good fight with the C-suite. And so, at the time, it was an interesting moment because Airbnb and Uber were really demonstrating what digital interface and experience design really could do to drive market share. So we were seeing, companies like P&G and IBM all in really with design thinking.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
design firms were seeing just this huge run of acquisitions, right? It was the time when McKinsey bought Lunar and
that's
Accenture
right. Yeah.
Fjord and Capital One bought Adaptive Path and Deloitte bought Doblin. Like it just was happening all over the place. But simultaneously, I think practitioners and skeptics, right, were seeing how design thinking was really getting commodified into these innovation workshops and these
Yeah.
trainings.
Yep.
And people were, I think, naturally just capitalizing on that opportunity, even if they didn't really know what they were doing. I think human-centered design is inherently democratic and it makes a lot of sense. And these deliberative processes really appeared pretty approachable, right? And they seemed easy to deliver. And so a whole sort of peripheral group jumped in and um, delivered all these design thinking workshops. And then the, wild days of the pandemic, right, made this kind of online business pivot accelerate even more. So I really think that what happened then is that methods really thinned into templates
Hmm.
and the robust approaches were, and really integrative approaches were really reduced into these sort of recipes. And I think the really empathic and synthetic meaning making, um, these generative practices were really reduced into a kind of check the box innovation approach. And executives were like, oh, check, buzzword, that's it.
We got our journey map,
Yeah.
right? We got our research plan. Now it's like we good. It's an artifact that's just on the shelf. It looks pretty, things like that.
And we've seen that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what management fashion is, right? We saw it in Six Sigma, we saw it in so many of these other trends. Like
Yeah.
what were the other ones? Like
Oh,
we see
um,
so many.
human-centered design, design thinking,
Yeah.
systems thinking, like,
So,
every it's one of those where each of these disciplines is a discipline in and of itself but
right.
actually to do things about it, right? The design life cycle or the agile life cycle, but it always stops, right? It becomes more of an artifact. The effort becomes to create the artifact, but not to do the work
Right.
itself afterwards, right? To actually like iterate or do something about it. So it's the commodification, I think you've thought of. We talked about this, right? The commodification of this type of thinking almost.
Yeah, it's just the management cycle, I think,
Yeah.
really. And so all of those, the balanced scorecard and agile and
Mhm.
all that, and maybe even AI now, we'll see, is right. It goes through that cycle and it either adapts and gets persistent in some way that it kind of quietly gets embedded into an institution and an organizational team.
Totally.
Um, so, I mean, I do remember a C-suite leader who I was working newly under telling me, like, we need to disrupt this. And I was like, this is a human services thing. Disrupt human services. Like people's
Yeah.
survival is relying on this stuff.
Use
Like you can't say disrupted. Like, holy moly, that's gonna like ruin everything.
using Silicon Valley buzzwords and methodology for areas that don't need that type of thinking or need more of a reorientation compared to something
Yeah,
like that.
not the way to go about it.
Absolutely. Let's
I,
talk
I
about more about your recent work and a little bit of a connection forward here. So now you're at Food Systems Action Lab. The focus has shifted from innovating inside institutions to something more structural. We're talking about building the markets, coordination mechanisms, navigating legal infrastructure to let local farmers, aggregators, and institutional buyers actually work together. And you've been partnering with Emory's Environmental Law School, which is really cool, on a legal toolkit. So this is advising the Illinois State's food systems roadmap task force. Task force. That's a mouthful, but quintessential government name. And working on with backing of the Rockefeller Foundation Learning Network on value-based procurement. Procurement is something not many people talk about, but it's so quintessential and the bedrock for anything that we do in society. Everything runs on contracts, right? An agreement between two parties or two individuals to do something. So what does that constellation of work add up to? And like what are the systems that you're shifting or you're trying to create as we speak?
Yeah, so I think a good way to talk about it, and I'm sort of playing an academic these days. So I'll quote Richard Buchanan and his Fourth Order of Design, which is actually from 1992. But what he is trying to signal in this Fourth Order of Design is that it's the conditions within which the services and the behaviors and the rules and the relationships are really designed. That's really what the Fourth Order is about, and even the design of institutions themselves. And as we're seeing today, new types of institutions are totally needed because the systems we set up before the digital era just aren't serving people the way we need them to. So
Totally.
the work we're doing around procurement is helping these different stakeholders. So whether it's farmers or processors or aggregators or buyers, often institutional buyers like universities and hospitals, um, recognizing that if they shifted some of their procurement dollars to include a values-based approach, you see values-based decision making, values-based governance, values-based procurement is similarly a pretty strong system lever for change. So if all of those folks can actually recognize the role they play in driving more values-based purchasing for schools, for example, farms to institutions, that can really shift the way the economy functions around a local food system. So that's the kind of work we're doing. We're bringing together and using design methods, right? We're helping people see the overall system. We're
Right.
helping them understand where they play and where their friends play, or even people their competitors. And
Yeah.
they come together and they're like, oh wow, you mean you guys could do that part better, and that would free up my time to do this part better? What do you know? What do you know? Right. And so that kind of coordinative, interstitial, connective tissue has just been consolidated out of our systems, frankly. Like this is not new. We used to know how to do this, right? When markets were
Yeah.
vertically integrated.
Totally.
But a lot of these corporate structures have actually stripped a lot of that knowledge base, a lot of that capability base out of our local food systems in this case.
Interesting. I just for our the audience education, could you give an example of like what a value-based like
Yeah.
orientation thinking would be?
Of course. Thank you. Thanks. So there's so many values, and every institution is going to hold their own set of values. Sustainability is a widely held value, and institutions are just, completely paralytic about what that can mean, actually. And so in these working groups, we've been able to say, hey, if you buy some portion of your food locally, that is going to reduce some of your greenhouse gas
Yeah,
emissions from transport. And here's the equation, and here's the way to calculate that. And but there's also local economies as a value. And if you're spending some of your contract on your neighborhood local economies, that keeps that money inside the community, and that,
totally.
can have that doubling and sometimes tripling effect depending on whose formula you're looking at. But there are real benefits from keeping those dollars local. Um, how is the nutrition held as a value for food systems? If something doesn't travel for, months and months, and
Right.
is actually, well managed, well distributed, the nutritional content and the flavor is improved. I think workers' rights is really critical. We're seeing
Totally.
that a big issue right now in the US, but so are animal rights. So if other organizations want to hold up animal rights conditions that are maintained, though, they can specify that in their contracts, and that the vendors from whom they procure, they want to have a certification or some proof that that can really validate their value statements. So it's organizationally beneficial, it's customer beneficial, and it helps people understand, yes, we do need a price point, but if you guys can say, we'll buy all those carrots on that menu and all those green beans, for our hospital meals or even our school meals, because if they're more flavorful, maybe kids will eat them, right? Then that helps a farmer know, seasons ahead, that all those veggies have a market.
Yeah.
So those kinds of coordinative contracts really can make a big difference for all those stakeholders.
Circular economies, localized industries and infrastructure. I think we're already seeing there is a almost a population sentiment of wanting to get more localized as opposed to relying on big multinational corporations to be delivering our own subsistence, our own food and things like that.
Exactly.
Um, let's keep it moving, yo. Like what's something you used to run into all the time doing this type of work before you finally figured out how to navigate it?
So you mentioned that I was at IDEO I
Yeah.
was almost there for like a decade, and I would say that, when I started working in these federated nonprofit organizations, you mentioned like the YMCA or Feeding America, it was so clear
Yeah.
that the sort of 350K consulting gig that IDEO was trying to keep itself, going on, that wasn't going to fly, right?
Yeah.
We really needed to grow any change leadership from within the confines, the capabilities, all the constraints of the organization, still stretching towards something that was transformative in a positive way, but really bringing along the folks to really participate in a synthetic and creative and all the evaluative phases of the work. And we really needed to include all these different social, technical, financial, regulatory assets that really were already in place in the organization. Sometimes they needed to be completely reconfigured. Sometimes they needed a total overhaul. Sometimes they were, a gem lost in the mix. As I'm sure you've seen in your work too, it's
Yeah.
really about reconfiguration and reprioritization. And then there are often gaps that need, renovation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's incremental steps. I always like there's always a line within the civic tech space that I've always seen is like move, it's the common trope around Silicon Valley is move fast and break things, while the opposite happens when it comes to spaces like this where it's like move slow and fix things. And that's sort of the mentality that you're coming from. So
Yeah.
now that you've figured something out, what's one thing that you're still trying to figure out as we speak?
So yeah, so I still think that this buzzword problem is playing out. It might just be generational, but it's also just what you were saying just now about that, like, what are these mantras we use to tell
Yeah.
ourselves these stories? So I was in this really interesting, like, multi-sector, I think it was an international meeting. And all these different folks from across their areas of expertise were talking about how do we really build this kind of food system transformation, regenerative, circular, which, feels a lot like another management fashion cycle. Right. Um, we need a tech bro to come in and solve
Uh,
this for us. And I like, I didn't know these people, so I was trying not to be, too theatrical, but I was like, no, we know what that looks like.
yeah,
So, these institutions really don't need tech-led solutions. They need
yeah,
stakeholder-led solutions.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm constantly working on how to refine the language that helps people understand nobody's going to come in with a silver bullet, right? And to help solve those issues, like these are really systemic issues that require us all to work together in these new ways. And that's going to be far more beneficial than relying on another tech bro, right?
You can certainly vibe code an app, but it's not going to be the thing that probably solves your problem. Most of the time, it's a people and processes issue, not a technological issue. The technological issue I've seen from my work is secondary or tertiary compared to, what exactly are you trying to solve here, and is technology the right tool for it? We're very much in our society, granted show, I mean, it's fair. I mean, we're very much like inundated with like technology focus, technology, 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 but most of the time, it's like a newer technology actually might just exacerbate the problem that you've been trying to solve. And this is that buzzword and buzzwords. It's almost I don't know if it's like a human psyche or something like that we always have to just cling on to like a terminology of some sort to help us anchor something. But then we miss the forest for the trees.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sympathetic. I think people see that there's opportunities, but then they overstate it with a buzzword, thinking that that's going to translate.
Yeah.
Uh, and as you say, it just misses the point. So,
Well, let's wrap up here. This one is sort of a last one, totally unrelated, but more of just like a fun one here. So you spent your days thinking about food at the systems level. We're talking about supply chains, procurement, equity, all the stuff that we talked about so far. But what's a food you personally love that you know has absolutely no defensible place in the sustainability food system that you've been trying to work on?
yeah. So I think we're all total victims of manufactured food, right? Like I think it's undeniable. We've grown up in this culture and we have our, soft spots or our whatever. I really do love manufactured ice cream sandwiches. So, um, my sister was in town this weekend. I went to the store. I picked up a couple of snacks, and those things just jumped right out of the cooler into my hands. So that was it.
I'm not above it either. I mean, we were talking before we went live with our show. I'm a sugary cereal fan. So you're talking about Lucky Charms, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Apple Jacks. Yeah, I mean, I just bought some cheddar ruffles, and when you look at the ingredients and you see yellow six
Yeah.
on that Ruffles packet, yeah, it makes you do a double take on like, maybe I shouldn't put that in my mouth, in my
Yeah.
body. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that there was anything original in this except synthetic chemicals, but boy, they were
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Where should people find your work? What would you like to plug in? Where should people connect with you?
Yeah, feel free to check out. It's not the best website, but we're periodically updating it with at the Food Systems Action Lab at the Institute of Design. Always looking for great students to come through the program. Really doing some super cool work, not only in food systems, but in health systems, in health equity, and in behavioral design and in accessibility. So lots of super interesting stuff happening there. And LinkedIn is always a good place as well. So
Can't
thanks
do
so
that.
much for
So
including me in this.
absolutely. And thanks for everyone coming to our show today. Don't forget to find us on YouTube, as well as our website, Instrumental Interactive, to like and subscribe. You know the drill. Maura, thank you very much for coming on the CX Pod, and we'll see y'all later.
Thanks, She. Really had fun. Appreciate it.
Thanks all.